meeting you right where you are on your foster care journey. This is the Forgotten Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Cabe, and I am so happy to be with you. If you are part of the foster care community, passionate about serving, or simply interested in learning more, we are here for you. In every episode of this podcast, you're going to hear from men and women who've experienced foster care to one degree or another. They may have grown up in the system, are caseworkers or foster parents, or other people who are here to bring you hope and encouragement. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe and share with a friend. Remember, you are not alone. I hope you enjoy the Forgotten Podcast. Well, hello and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. This is a bonus episode, and I want to wish you from the get-go, Merry Christmas. You guys, it's Christmas time, and I have been listening to Christmas music since just a smidge before November, but I get dirty looks from my husband when the Christmas music is on. And today I have a very special guest, moving right along, Mitch Nelson. Hi, Mitch.
Yes, I am super happy to be here.
Yeah, this is so cool. This is a whole different vibe we're going to give off today on this episode. Mitch actually works here at the Forgotten Initiative. He is our creative director. Mitch, tell a little bit about what you do and why you love working here.
Yes. I am the creative director. We talk a lot on this podcast about the advocate role that we have. And a big part of my job is to help people learn about the advocate role and decide to take that step if it's what's next for them in kind of their foster care journey. Yeah. So I'm trying to get people involved in this work that we're doing.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. We're all pretty pumped and on focus of helping people launch and lead thriving foster care ministries here at TFI. And this podcast is such an awesome thing that we get to do to hopefully we're hope that we're adding value to you every single day. And Mitch is a big part of making this podcast happen also.
Yeah, I love the podcast. Thank you to everybody who listens. It has been incredible. Season 11, in fact, we just wrapped up, has been our most listened to season in the history of our podcast.
Wow, I didn't know this.
Which is, it's very cool. The podcast continues to grow, continues to help, and like we said, I guess hopefully bring value. But we hear from many of you that it does, and that's just very cool to be doing such powerful work. So we really appreciate for all of you who are listening.
Absolutely. And just on that note, we do want to hear from you. We love hearing from you. And if there's a topic you want to hear about, if there's a message or a speaker or someone that you want to hear from, let us know. We would love to consider that and see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, they can go on our website, theforgotteninitiative.org, and they can contact us there. And we would love to hear, any of those ideas. Today, we actually wanted to kind of look back on some of the episodes that we just finished in season 11. And, we're wrapping up season 11 and it's kind of the end of the year as well. So we're going to look back on a handful of kind of our favorite moments. There's so many of them, but just a handful of them today, walking back through some of the episodes that we have recorded and listened to over the years or over this year. So we're just going to start it off. This season 11, episode 4, we talked to a couple, Katrina and AJ, who I think the episode was all about kind of their experience saying no throughout their kind of foster care journey, which I know is something that we hear about wanting to be talked about on the podcast a lot. And I believe we do talk about it relatively often. But for me, even just to kind of start on this episode, I always appreciate when there's a male voice on the podcast. For those of you listening, I'm not a foster parent. I really, my connection to foster care has been through the last 4 years working here at TFI. But to hear a male perspective on the podcast is always refreshing, first of all, but also just kind of powerful. He was honest and kind of saying, I did this because Katrina wanted to, like I didn't initiate this process. And even I think they were talking about kind of like their waiting kind of time during their journey. And he was like, I was kind of okay with it. I was kind of nervous still. So waiting for me, was fine. I don't know what you remember about this episode, but I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. And actually not on this episode, but just what you said made me think of like me and Clint's journey too, because waiting was like so painful for me, painful. And Clint, I think, was kind of similar. It was like, I mean, he didn't know why we were waiting, and it was frustrating because it's like, we want to serve, we're here. But he did not experience the ups and downs that I did. And I know that Katrina has experienced also. one of my favorite things that they said is there is no right way to live out the gospel.
Yeah. At first, I honestly, when I listened to that, I wondered if that was true when I heard it, because I was like, well, I think there are wrong ways to live it out. But does that mean that there's a necessary right way? But then as you listen to the episode, they kind of explain that, like really just listening to God and really kind of the sentiment of each family's experience is going to be different.
Right.
The way that every family is going to live this out. Like I said, I'm not a foster parent. That does not mean I'm not living out the gospel.
Right.
And oh my,
we have a train going by.
There's a train going by our office. But yeah, so I just think that is such a powerful kind of quote and statement. But it definitely made me think at first.
Yeah. Well, and just so you, as our listeners, know, we're not suggesting there is no right way to heaven. We know that the gospel is the gospel of Jesus dying on the cross, rising again.
Definitely.
Like, there is one way. But to live out our calling, our purpose, that's God created beauty in the differences.
Yes. I just think that, that understanding of, not every family needs to live it out the same way, I think is just very powerful. I think of even thinking outside of families. I mean, single people in our churches, younger people, older people, your stage of life does not negate your ability to live out this relationship with Jesus. And I just think that that's true in and out of foster care.
Yeah. How sad would that be if it's like, no, from 30 to 50 is prime years to live out the gospel?
Yeah, definitely. There was also a quote that Katrina said that I thought was really cool, and I'll read this here. I think she was talking about kind of maybe even in those waiting periods where she was feeling like, I'm so sad, and I'm excited to move forward even. She said, you could move forward with this and you could drag your family along with you, literally drag them along with you, and God would be faithful and everything would be okay. But is that what's best for your family? And is that what's best for these kids? And I just think that is, a powerful illustration of like, God might even bless, you moving forward when maybe your family's not on the same page or your spouse isn't on the same page. But is that really what's best? Totally. Where you're just spearheading this thing and everybody else is like, I'm dying, as you're dragging us along. I thought that was very powerful.
Yeah, I remember that in our own journey where we had 3 little kids that we had fostered, so that totaled our family to 6 little kids, and I was drowning and I was going through some depression and the birth mom of the 3 little kids that we had a good relationship. And so I actually was at the birth of her baby.
Oh, yeah.
And she was going to have this child adopted by actually friends of ours. And ultimately, she changed her mind. And it was a very emotional time because I understand why she wanted this child for sure. I also had to be the one to tell this family who was at the hospital waiting to take their baby home as they understood it. And so to have to share that was a no. Yeah. And in this situation as well, the baby was going to have to go immediately into foster care.
Oh, wow.
Because of the situation. Jeez. And so I went home and said, Clint, we have to take this baby. Yeah. Like, what will happen?
Right.
Like, if not us, then who, right?
Right.
And I was just like, we have to do this. I cut this child's cord. I held him 5 minutes after he was born. I mean, like, I knew this baby. I love this baby. But Clint's like, we could, but you're drowning and we're drowning. And you actually run the risk of really not being able to do what you're doing now and maybe even having to send these children away because we can't do everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea of if I don't do it, who will? Because I'm the only one that's able is kind of, I think that sometimes. Yeah. And that is,
I don't think it's
very,
true.
Yeah, no, not at all. But it's so easy because you've done it before. You're doing it now and you're like, I like the way I do this. I need to help this child or whatever the case might be. And, but yeah, that can get you into some kind of dangerous places, you know, in your life. And that's
that kind of goes right back to their episode of that sometimes it's good to say no or to not move forward.
Yeah. And we don't need to feel guilty if that's what needs to happen, And I think, all that to say, like, staying close to the Lord, staying in prayer, surrounding yourself with people who are doing the same and are able to speak into your life on behalf of, God and the Holy Spirit, I think is so powerful. Otherwise, you're just in your head thinking through all of this stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I loved AJ and Katrina's episode.
Yeah.
Again, for the listeners, that's season 11, episode 4. And you can listen to that, anywhere you listen to podcasts. So we also talked to Brenna. Was one of
I love Brenna.
Anytime we have the chance to speak to somebody whose children were removed from them and put into foster care, I think it is so special. And I feel so truly even honored to be able to create the space where those stories can be shared. But yeah, it was such a powerful episode. This is season 11, episode 7. And you can go back and listen to that. But yeah, she's a mom who had her children removed from her home. And I mean, man, her life just was so similar to mine in many ways. Growing up, church was her primary kind of social activity. She was homeschooled. I was not homeschooled, but she was homeschooled. And kind of one thing led to another, and she found herself in a place that, many of us have seen this, where we are helping many of these children. And I don't know what you remember about this episode, but it was very powerful.
Yeah. I mean, she shared very openly her journey of brokenness and how kind of one thing led to another that created this separation that her kids had to be removed. And yet she also got to share how she's getting them back. Yeah. And she was, when we talked to her, it was right in the place when transition had just happened.
I think so, yeah.
That they were home, and she was so thankful. And so just for her to be able to share so openly and raw, I mean, it was a privilege, like you said.
It was, yeah.
One thing that she said that I had never thought about, because, I listen to foster parents. I was a foster parent. When caseworkers when there's turnover in social work and caseworkers leave, a new caseworker comes in and a foster parent has to kind of sometimes feel like they are reminding them of here's where we are in the case and here's what we've done, and please remember this, because sometimes that gets lost in translation.
I don't want to lose progress that I've made or whatever.
And she mentioned that was really hard as a birth parent, as a parent who's lost her kids, is every time a caseworker came, she had to prove herself all over again.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I mean, it feels like you're just starting over.
This is your life.
Yeah. I thought, I can't remember if it was in the same kind of or part of the conversation, but she also shared about how kind of, just defeated she could feel when they would do video, through COVID.
Yes, because
do
this was
video
all through
calls.
COVID.
And I mean, I can imagine. I mean, we zoomed here at TFI a lot, but it's she shared another quote, and she said, it was very tedious. You have to try and show that you are a good parent through a video camera. And so I have a 6-month-old at home, and I mean, I have a hard enough time trying to be a good parent, when I'm in person. When Bennett's crying and I'm like, I don't know what to do, right now. I'm still figuring this out, let alone if it was over a Zoom call, through a webcam. And she goes on and she says, it is almost stressful to have yourself under a radar like that. How do you prove yourself to be a good mom through a supervised virtual visit? Because I can't pick them up and show them how I can comfort a baby when they're crying. Yeah. And I was just like, man,
and her kids were little.
Right. Yeah. I just thought, I mean, my mind was just kind of blown when I re-listened to that, because I don't know, so much of what COVID has done has become so normal, but that just is, that's just very difficult. Yeah. And to imagine, like I said, being on a video call and my son is crying and just and they're prove to me that you're a good dad. I'm I don't know if I could.
Right.
That sounds very hard.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, and the power of touch, you don't get to hold your child, to touch your child, I cannot imagine how painful that would be.
Right. I just think that this episode was such a great reminder for me, and I think for all of us, of just our need for the Lord, for Jesus, and people around us, support systems, and just, I don't know, I was just reminded that without Christ, I would be just so far gone. Right. And I just think that this episode was so powerful, and I'm so thankful to Brenna for sharing these things. I thought it was very interesting. I didn't necessarily expect to hear it. She shared about an eating disorder that she struggled with, which I have very little knowledge about, generally speaking. And my mind was just kind of opened in that regard as well, where I was like, man, she was running 10 miles a day, eating like a banana.
Yes.
Because I don't know, things from her she felt like she just needed to be thin or that's what everybody else did. And there are so many things that kind of come into play. Like, this is not a very straightforward type of a situation. Like, bad thing happens, kids go home or kids are removed. And,
right.
Good people come and bring, that's not at all how this works. And there are very complicated, complex things going on. And this episode was a kind of great, reminder, and I'm thankful that we were able to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And this is why I love being in the host seat, because I get to learn from so many people. I cannot tell you how many times I've thought or shared from our guests to other people as I'm sharing or talking. Like, I am profoundly changed because of the podcast. And it's a blessing. I just love that I get to ask the questions, because it's like, if you say something that I want to dig in deeper, if I'm a listener on the other side, like, I can't ask more, but I get to ask.
Yeah, you're the one who gets to. Yeah.
But listeners, if you guys do have specific questions, like, tell me, because that would be awesome to be able to, we want your voice in here.
Yeah, I think that, I think we make a very intense effort to diversify kind of the stories that we're able to share. To be able to get Brenna on the show was not, by chance. We were very intentional, because we know that there are powerful stories, and we know that we can share and continue to spread kind of the love of Christ and through kind of this, foster care type of vehicle.
Yeah.
But we get to share kind of the love of Jesus through it. And I just think it's so cool. But yes, we would love to hear any topics, questions, perspectives, anything along those lines. We would love to hear suggestions about that.
Yeah.
Move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. We also got to hear from James Drayer.
Oh, James.
Yes, this is
my
episode
buddy.
8 in season 11. And I'll just hand it over to you, Jamie. You even, I think, in maybe the intro or outro, or maybe it was just in the office when you came out after recording, you were very emotional.
I was. Yeah, I was emotional in the episode too. I had to pull it together. Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's because I've known James, but I know him personally.
Yeah.
He's a really good friend of my kids.
Yeah.
And so when all the kids come over, he's one of them. But his story was about being a biological child in a family that did residential care. Yeah. So they were foster parents, but in a home, in a residential home to teenagers who had lots of trauma and lots of impacts of trauma in their lives. And so he shared the impact of living in that environment where your parents are living on mission, caring for other kids who have increasingly great need. Just needs that are big.
Sure.
And the impact that had on him, and it was hard.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those things where he was like, no, it was absolutely great. And I always felt like my parents knew everything about me.
I'm willing to sacrifice for the Lord. Yeah.
Right.
No. Yeah.
But yet, like, how he ends it, and even throughout, he talks about how it was so worth it. And someone asked him, have you been wrecked because of the way your parents lived? And he said, absolutely I have, but I've been wrecked for the gospel. And as a mom who has adopted a lot of children, who is living on mission, who we are serving those who can't give back. Yeah. It takes its toll on us.
Totally.
And it takes its toll on our kids. And so to hear from him, like, I'm so glad my parents did this, even though there was times when I wanted just to tell them about my day and they were too exhausted to listen. Because that happens. Yeah. That is real life here. And I so desperately want to be a mom that hears my kids and that knows them, but I'm a limited person. Yeah. And so just hearing him just gave me a lot of hope. Yeah. And I just lost it.
That is totally, that has to be encouraging.
Yeah.
He is, in many ways kind of just a picture of some of your children, and I just think that's so powerful. And this actually resonated very well on social media as we shared this. Did. People were sharing and sharing this with their friends. And I just think it's because of much of what you said. I think as many of our listeners are maybe in your same shoes or similar shoes of, we are a family on mission. We are doing this. And, that's not everybody, but that's many people. And I think that it resonates to be like, wow, maybe, things are hard. And maybe, my children are wrecked, but I pray to God that, they are wrecked for him, through all of this, because regardless if you're involved in foster care, adoption at all. I mean, life is not intended to be comfortable or easy as a follower of Jesus. And I just think that, yeah, James, I can't remember how old he is, but he's a teenager.
Or he's early 20s.
Early 20s.
Yeah.
And
he's in college.
It's just very cool to hear such a kind of powerful, mature sharing of his story at such a young age. And I was encouraged by that.
The funny thing is, he and he had another friend came to our house. And so he was actually recording from my house while I was here at the office.
Yes, I remember.
Because it was kind of a crazy time. We don't have as much space right now to.
Yeah, I remember in the scheduling, he was like, well, I'll be there at whatever, 10 or whatever time it was. And we were like, oh, we are not prepared. Typically the interviews are happening.
Right. And I think I had told him, yeah, sure, come on.
Right. And
that's where I say things that you guys are like, no.
I was not aware that was happening. So we were like, can you just get on your computer and, kind of do this? So his parents worked at Gateway Woods, right is what it's called.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, and I'm not going to be able to tell this well, but it was like years ago. We are we are connected with Lifesong for Orphans, and we used to share an office with them years ago. I believe somebody came in and shared. I remember sitting in the conference room. It was a guy. I want to say his name was I don't know what his name was, Rick or Ryan or R or something R. And he shared, and I just remember thinking man, Gateway Woods sounds like real gospel work. But I also was kind of like, that sounds hard, So, Rob,
yes, because then I had him on the podcast.
Yes, okay, yes, that's what I thought. I knew there were multiple points of connection. But yeah, I remember he had come in and he shared a little bit about their ministry, and I just remember hearing that he was on the podcast, and then when I saw kind of James' bio and stuff that he submitted, I was like, oh man, this is, coming up again. But one quote that really kind of resonated, and I thought it was kind of humorous in some ways, because I believe, if I remember correctly, he shared the quote and it was like his pastor. Yes. Like he was speaking.
Somebody had shared the quote with him.
Yeah. And, so it was just kind of funny because we were like quoting him saying it, which he did, but he said, sometimes in American Christianity, we ask to be the hands and feet of Christ, but we don't want to be the scarred hands and feet of Christ. And I just think that, like mic drop, total moment, because it's so easy to forget that, Christ came and, came to serve others.
Right.
And he was, tortured and experienced the worst death possible. Yet, we think that, or somehow it's easy to like slip into this mindset of, I just want to have like this nice, clean life, and I want to, be the hands and feet of Jesus. And you're like, the hands and feet of Jesus have scars and holes in them because of like the life that he lived. And man, it was powerful to hear that.
I agree completely. And I remember when we first started foster care, one of the kids brought in head lice, which for me was not a huge thing, but it felt like a huge thing. Like I felt like I was losing my mind. Yeah. Also, we had just doubled our family, so that's probably part of it.
That had to play some sort of
maybe
role.
a minor role. But I just remember walking through the living room or through the basement and just like kind of just I can't do this, and I would sit in my leather chair because I felt like that was the one place that the lice couldn't get me.
Right.
Like, I was a little crazy, but it really rocked me. And then some of the kids got staph infections that then I got a staph infection and another kid got staph infection. And these were like painful. And I'm sitting here, I remember having one on my chin, and you have to like, this is gross, but you have to like push out the pus and like to clean. It's very gross. Sorry. But you have to push it out and it hurts. And I remember sitting in the bathroom trying to clean out this thing and just crying, like thinking, well, like this is not the gospel that I wanted to live out. But, and that's a minor example of people who have, martyrs and people who have gone through so much, but it did make me think, okay, now I have bled for the cause.
Yeah, totally. This is totally not serious at all. But when I was in high school, I played drums, whatever. I was in Battle of the Bands and things. And a bunch of teachers always would make a band, and their band name was Staph Infection because they were staff of the school. And so you said that, and I just had this vision of my teachers playing
Nice.
guitar. And
That's
you're
amazing.
like, you play guitar? I thought you were my math teacher.
Yes.
But
And now you're probably older than some of those teachers were.
Sure. I mean, I'm only 28. I don't know.
Come on, man. You're getting up there.
I do have more gray hairs than I ever have in my life. But I don't know. Maybe it's, the 6-month-old. Who
Could
knows?
be.
But yeah, James's episode was very powerful. Again, that was episode 8 of season 11. And just a powerful story of, the perspective of being a child in a family that is on mission.
Right.
And really kind of the beauty that can come from even some of the most difficult or stressful times as a child.
And he's going into work.
Yeah.
On
right.
missional work.
Yes.
Also,
yes. He had interned at Gateway Woods. I can't remember if he's going to work there or not. But
I'm forgetting. He's doing teaching. So I think perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, how encouraging.
Right.
Wow, you've experienced the best and the worst likely of this. Yet you're saying, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And how encouraging.
Yeah.
We also kind of our final kind of favorite episode or favorite moment, though many of these episodes were our favorite. They're all our favorite. They're all our favorite. Everybody gets a trophy.
This is what I tell my kids.
Okay, yeah.
You are all my favorite. It just what do I tell my kids?
What do you
something about you are all my favorite, but it just I can't think of it. Basically, I'm trying to say you're all my favorite. It just depends on the day who I like the most at the time.
Sure.
I really butchered that.
No, that's okay. I think I'll use that with Bennett. It sounds great. I don't know. No, that's great. I mean, I think that again, the idea of doing this podcast is very, very I'm so privileged to even be a part of it. I get to listen to, the raw audio from the thing, and I'm just like, wow, this is very cool. People don't get to do this kind of work all the time, and I'm encouraged that I get to.
Yeah, awesome.
We also talked to Leah Johnson. Leah is one of our TFI advocates. This is episode 6 from season 11.
She is our people.
Yeah, Leah is great. She is, it's so cool because she is relatively kind of a newer advocate, maybe a year now, that she's been with us. And she got to share kind of just her experience of kind of being a TFI advocate and some of the different things she gets to do. And just to get us started, I mean, I think kind of the thing that I remember the most from this episode was kind of her Will Smith.
I agree. I say that all the time to people.
Yeah, and we annually, with all of our TFI advocates, we go on a retreat. And it's kind of like half retreat, kind of half conference. They're like speakers and leadership development that we kind of pour into our advocates as they are leading these ministries. And she was one of the people who spoke. Right. And she shared this there as well. Kind of this idea of there's a picture of Will Smith at the Grammys and kind of, I mean, I can imagine what it would be like to be at the Grammys. Everybody's taking all your pictures. And he's basically kind of standing back and like kind of like giving like the praise that people are trying to get from him or, of himself to his wife.
Yeah. And she's the one.
Right. She is the one that you should be, looking at. And she's the one that, really is, the star here or whatever. And Leah kind of equated that to kind of what the work of being an advocate is, where we get to kind of do that. Everybody wants to look at, look at Leah. She's the leader of this ministry in North Carolina. But she gets to say, no, like, look here, look at the church and look at, this community that we get to highlight and how the church is meeting these needs. Right. And I'm just the one building these connections and making these relationships happen. And so I just think that's a very powerful illustration. And I loved that she shared that.
Yeah, the TFI advocate role is more about really being in the background and elevating, developing other people to do the work, right? So it's not so much a direct service role. It's really more of we want everyone to experience more of Jesus. He's the hero, but he does it amazingly through his people, through the church. Yeah. But what I just love, too, about what we get to do at TFI is that it's not just about the church caring for and supporting the foster care community. We actually need the foster care community just as much as they need us. Right. And we just want to all grow closer to Jesus because he is the ultimate hero.
It's like you said, like you oftentimes find yourself being the one who is, maybe more impacted as you're interviewing these different guests on the podcast. Like you're just like, I am not here to, I don't know, somehow, serve you or share your story so that, all these maybe foster parents or people connected to, ministry and caring for their communities can know you better so they can serve you more.
Right.
You're sitting there and you're like, I needed to hear what you just said.
Absolutely.
You just served me,
right.
And I think on a bigger scale, that is exactly what we desire. And for our TFI advocates is, you're not just helping needs get met using the church to meet these needs through the agency, but you're saying, no, like it goes the other way as well. And I think that that's so easy to miss, but it's so cool to hear people like Leah share about kind of her experience where that gets to happen.
Right.
I just think it's great. And I think, even anytime we get to share a story from one of our advocates on the podcast is always fun because like you said, these are our people. I mean, we are, they are meeting with coaches regularly. They are being trained. They are, wearing TFI t-shirts. They are, they are all in, and really
they are representing TFI where they live.
Yeah, they are what we do. Like I said at the very beginning, my job is kind of all about finding more people like Leah who are willing to kind of say, I want to connect the church and agency to one another. Yeah. And doing that is what we do. So anytime we get to, call it work and hang out for an hour with an advocate on a podcast, and you're like, my day was great. It's always fun.
Absolutely.
So I love, and we have a handful of different episodes from all kinds of different, some of our TFI advocates on the podcast, but Leah's was in season 11 and I just thought it was very cool.
I agree. And she lovingly or laughingly, I don't know what the right word is, refers to herself in the body of Christ as the armpit.
Right, yeah.
But that is just so like her humility and desire to be like in the background and like it doesn't feel like it. Like it's a very important place and role, but she's like, I don't need to be out front. I don't want to be out front. I want to be in the background helping these people connect to each other.
Right. And I think it's also so cool because while she says those things, I mean, there is in some regard, like a reality to like, she does need to go to a church and maybe they're like, oh, could you share about what even foster care is at our church on Sunday?
Absolutely.
And like I said, she spoke at our retreat. She would be the first one to tell you, I want to and am, the armpit in the body of Christ. And I don't want to be in the spotlight. But if that's what God is asking of me,
but I'll be there if you
I'll
need
stand
me
up and I'll talk.
Right.
And
she believes in the mission.
Right. And I just think that's so cool. And just that attitude is, one that I can learn from. Or, like if God is asking me to do something I don't want to do or I don't even feel like I'm good at. Right. I guess I'm still going to do it if I want to be like Leah and like Christ, so it's very cool that we got to talk to her.
Yeah. Well, and we are a ministry of leaders, developing leaders. We're developing leaders. And the whole thing about being a leader is you're stepping out into the unknown. Right. You're always, I believe if we're doing it right, we're always going to be a little unsteady because we are stepping out. We don't know if this is, we say often like we're doing this as a grand experiment, because we don't know exactly if what we're doing. Yeah. Nobody does.
No, like I said, I don't know how to be a dad, but I am one, and it's going fine. Yeah. I do some stuff really well and other things poorly. Yeah. And I'll get better, hopefully, over time, you know, and there's not a answer book for parenting or foster care or ministry or leadership.
To live out the gospel.
Totally.
Coming back right around to AJ and
exactly. Katrina. Yeah, there is not a guidebook. Yeah. And even if there was, I doubt it would have, kind of a copy and paste type of a situation. Right. It would have, generally speaking, do this, maybe, or follow God, pray. Right. So it's just very cool. It's so encouraging to be able to talk about these episodes. The season was just packed full. And like I said, season 11 is, the most listened to season we've had on the podcast. And so I can only imagine kind of what season 12 is going to hold. I know that we have some incredible guests lined up for season 12 that I'm very excited to share. Yeah. And so I just can't wait to kind of come back in the new year and, start learning more, start sharing more of these stories. Yep. And continue to experience Jesus together.
Amen. And hopefully we will hear more from you guys as our listeners. Again, with your input or how this is impacting you. It is incredibly encouraging to hear the God stories. Yeah. And we point it back to God because we know that anything that he allows us to be a part of is a gift. Like it's not about us, it's about him. And so we love being on this journey with you.
Yeah. One final note, we do have a handful of people watching us on YouTube. So if you are listening right now and you did not know that we have a YouTube channel and video versions of this podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're just the Forgotten Initiative. But of course, please share any questions, comments, suggestions, topics, guests, anything like that at theforgotteninitiative.org.
Yeah.
But other than that, we will see you next year.
Woohoo! And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Enjoy
everybody.
Well, I hope today's episode was an encouragement to you wherever you are on this foster care journey. Now, we want you to stay connected, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Also, we have a ton of great content for you over at theforgotteninitiative.org. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to see you next time.